"I'm leaving you and I've already sold our vacation home to start fresh with my personal trainer," she declared over the phone, her voice tinged with a mix of excitement and nervousness. I kept my tone steady as I replied, "I see. My name is Michael Thompson." At 55, I had spent 25 years as a corporate real estate advisor based in Miami, Florida. My expertise lay in identifying hidden value in properties that others had overlooked or dismissed. My career thrived on patience, meticulousness, and a keen eye for details that others often missed. Unfortunately, I hadn't applied the same level of scrutiny to my marriage until it was almost too late. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in Zurich, finalizing a corporate headquarters acquisition for a multinational tech company. 5 days into my trip 4,500 miles from home, and Emily decided this was the perfect time to end our 18-year marriage. "Alex and I need a fresh start," she continued, her voice laced with a confidence I recognized from countless divorce stories I'd heard from colleagues. "The vacation home sold for a good price. I've already signed the papers." Alex Miller, her personal trainer for the past 20 months, a 32-year-old who drove a car he couldn't afford and once asked me without any shame how much my watch cost. I didn't slam the hotel desk, didn't raise my voice, just calmly asked, "When did you close the sale?" "Yesterday," she said, sounding almost disappointed by my composure. "Buyers moving in next week. I figured you wouldn't mind staying at the Hyatt when you get back since you're always on the road anyway." Fraudulent property sale attempt. Outside my window, snow began to fall on the Swiss streets. I watched business people hurry for cover, opening umbrellas, rushing into cafes. 18 years together, and Emily didn't know me at all. She thought I was predictable, passive, that I'd roll over and accept whatever she decided. But there was one critical detail she'd overlooked. You don't spend decades in real estate without learning how to protect your assets. And you don't leave your livelihood to chance, especially when your instincts have been quietly warning you for months that something wasn't right at home. I met Emily Rogers, 19 years ago, at a real estate conference in Las Vegas. She was working for a high-end property development firm, all sharp suits and sharper ambition. I was impressed by her confidence, her quick mind. Within a year, we were married at the courthouse with just her best friend and my cousin as witnesses. We bought the vacation home in Key West 3 years later. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a wraparound deck with unobstructed ocean views. It cost $1.5 million, almost my entire savings plus a sizable mortgage. I'd spend weekends repairing the weathered siding, upgrading the kitchen, and replacing the rotted deck boards while Emily decorated and hosted friends. "This is our forever place," she'd said, raising her wine glass on our first night there. I'd believed her. For over a decade, we made it work. She quit property development to start her own event planning business, which gave her the flexibility to join me on international trips when the opportunity arose. I'd extended my business days to include weekend getaways in Rome, Madrid, and Sydney. We'd been good together, or so I thought. The first crack appeared about 3 years ago. Small things. She stopped asking about my work, started declining invitations to join me abroad. Her texts grew shorter, more perfunctory. "Have a good meeting. Safe travels. No more 'I miss you,' or 'can't wait until you're home.'" Then came the gym membership. 5 days a week she'd train with Alex, a former college athlete turned personal trainer. At first I was supportive, encouraged her newfound focus on fitness, but then came the unexplained expenses on our credit card. Dinners I wasn't part of, weekend spa retreats with friends I'd never met. I didn't confront her, didn't place tracking apps on her phone, or hire investigators like some of my divorced colleagues had done. I simply observed, made mental notes, and quietly began preparing for what increasingly felt inevitable. 11 months ago, I transferred the vacation home into a living trust. The paperwork was buried among refinancing documents for our investment property in Naples. Emily had signed everything without reading, too busy texting on her phone while my attorney waited patiently. "This protects us both," I'd told her. It wasn't entirely a lie. The structure would indeed protect the property, just not in the way she assumed. I never mentioned it again. Just watched as she grew more distant, more attached to her phone, more dismissive of our shared future. After emailing my attorney from Zurich, I closed my laptop and pulled the property deed from my briefcase. I always traveled with it, a habit from early in my career. When a client tried to back out of a deal, claiming paperwork discrepancies, the deed clearly showed the Key West property was held in the Michael Thompson Living Trust with me as the sole trustee. Emily had absolutely no legal right to sell it. The irony wasn't lost on me. In our early years, she'd teased me about my paperwork obsession, and tendency to read every contract word for word. Life's too short for fine print, Michael, she'd say with a laugh. But fine print had been the foundation of my career. And now, apparently, the salvation of my home. I called Samuel while walking through Bahnhofstrasse, Zurich's bustling shopping street. She can't sell what she doesn't own, he confirmed after I explained the situation. Any sale she initiated is fraudulent. The buyers have no legal claim. And Emily, attempting to sell property she doesn't own. That's fraud. Criminal charges are possible, though I assume that's not your preferred outcome. It wasn't. Despite everything, I didn't want Emily in legal jeopardy, but I also couldn't let her take the house. I've contacted the county recorder's office, Samuel continued. They've flagged any attempted transfers on the property. I'll also notify any local title companies. This sale won't go through, Michael. After we hung up, I didn't immediately return to my hotel. Instead, I found a small cafe and ordered a coffee. I sat there for nearly 2 hours, watching tourists and locals pass by, trying to understand how 18 years of marriage had dissolved into this moment. What struck me wasn't anger. It was clarity. The betrayal wasn't just about another man, or selling our home without my knowledge. It was the casual cruelty of it, the laughter in her voice when she delivered the news. As if my pain was an amusing afterthought. As if our life together had meant nothing. I sent a brief text to the Zurich client explaining a family emergency required me to return home immediately. Then I booked the first available flight to Florida. On the 9-hour flight, I didn't watch movies or read reports. I just sat quietly, a strange calm settling over me. For years I'd navigated complex real estate negotiations for others, always finding the pressure points that would give my clients leverage. Now I would use those same skills for myself. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, balance, setting things right. By the time the plane touched down in Miami, my course was set. I wouldn't yell or plead or try to salvage what was clearly broken beyond repair. I would simply enforce the contract she'd signed but never bothered to read. In property matters, signatures always matter more than intentions. That was a lesson Emily was about to learn. I didn't tell Emily I was coming home early. I rented a car at the airport and drove the 40 minutes to Key West in silence. It was just after noon on Saturday when I pulled into our driveway. A black Mercedes convertible I didn't recognize was parked in my usual spot. Kyle, I presumed. The front door was unlocked. I could hear laughter from the kitchen, Emily and a male voice discussing what sounded like renovation plans. The wall between the living room and dining room should come down first, the man was saying. Open concept is everything in beach properties. I set my suitcase down quietly and walked toward the voices. Emily was leaning against the kitchen island, wearing a sundress I'd never seen, a glass of champagne in her hand. Alex stood behind her, his arm casually draped around her waist, pointing at something on a tablet. They both looked up as I entered. Emily's smile faltered for just a moment, before recovering. Michael, she said, surprise poorly concealed. I didn't expect you back until Monday. Clearly, I replied, glancing at Alex, who at least had the decency to remove his arm from my wife's waist. This is awkward, Alex said with a nervous laugh. I should probably go. Actually, I countered, I'd prefer if you stayed. This concerns you too, apparently. Emily's expression hardened. We don't need to make this difficult, Michael. I've been unhappy for a long time. We both deserve a fresh start. I nodded calmly. I agree completely, which is why I've already spoken to my attorney about the fraudulent property sale you attempted. The color drained from her face. What are you talking about? I placed my briefcase on the counter and retrieved the trust documents and property deed. The vacation home isn't yours to sell, Emily. It hasn't been for almost a year. Alex looked confused. You said the sale was final, he said to Emily. It was, she insisted, but I could see the uncertainty creeping into her expression. Check the deed, I suggested. The property is owned by the Michael Thompson Living Trust. You signed the transfer papers last May. Remember those refinancing documents you didn't bother to read? She snatched the papers from my hand, scanning them frantically. This isn't possible, she whispered. Not only is it possible, it's legally binding, I continued. The sale you initiated is null and void. The buyer has already been notified. Alex's confidence visibly deflated. I'll wait in the car, he muttered, making a quick exit. Once we were alone, Emily's shock transformed into rage. You tricked me, she accused. No, I corrected her. I protected my assets, which is standard practice in my profession. You chose not to read what you were signing. That's not trickery. It's negligence. She tried a different approach, her voice softening. Michael, be reasonable. We can split the proceeds. There's no need for lawyers. Except there are already lawyers involved, I replied. Not just mine. The buyers are understandably upset about purchasing a property from someone who doesn't own it. They're considering their own legal options. You wouldn't, she whispered. I'm not doing anything, I clarified. I'm simply enforcing the legal ownership of the property. What happens next depends entirely on how you choose to proceed. Emily's face hardened again. She grabbed her phone from the counter. I'm calling my sister's lawyer. You won't get away with this. I didn't argue, just nodded and said, you should definitely consult an attorney. I'll be staying at the Hilton downtown tonight to give you space. But to be clear, this house is not being sold, and I'll be moving back in on Monday. As I turned to leave, she called after me. This isn't over, Michael. I glanced back at her, standing in the kitchen we'd renovated together, champagne still in hand. Actually, Emily, I think it is. Sunday morning, I met with Samuel at his office. The space was quiet, empty of the usual paralegals and assistants who filled it during weekdays. Samuel looked tired, but determined as he spread several documents across his desk. There's more, he said without preamble. I had my investigator do some digging after your call. He pushed a folder toward me. Inside were bank statements, credit card receipts, and property records I'd never seen before. Emily's been busy, Samuel continued. She opened a separate account last year, transferred about $200,000 from your joint savings. The amount hit me like a physical blow. That was the majority of our liquid emergency fund. There's also this, he added, sliding another document forward. Preliminary paperwork for a retail space in Tampa. Lease is in both her name and Alex Miller's. They're opening a fitness boutique, signed 4 months ago. I stared at the pages, trying to process what I was seeing. This wasn't an impulsive affair. This was calculated, planned. They'd been working toward this for months, maybe longer. The timing makes sense now, I said, more to myself than Samuel. She wasn't just selling the house for a divorce settlement. She needed capital for this business. Samuel nodded. And there's one more thing. The buyer for your vacation home, it's a shell company. Guess who owns it? Alex. His cousin Robert Miller. They were trying to get the house at below market value through a fraudulent sale, then likely flip it for profit after you discovered the sale, and were forced to negotiate. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't just Emily leaving me for another man. This was a deliberate financial scheme to extract maximum value before discarding our marriage. I felt something shift inside me. The calm acceptance I'd maintained since her phone call transformed into something colder, more focused. This wasn't just about protecting what was mine anymore. This was about accountability. What are my options? I asked. Samuel leaned back in his chair. Legally, you're in a strong position. The trust protects the house. We can freeze the joint accounts to prevent further transfers. As for the money she's already taken. He paused. That's trickier. Florida's an equitable distribution state. She could argue it was her share of marital assets. And the fraudulent sale attempt, that's where we have leverage. It's criminal fraud, potentially grand theft depending on how a prosecutor views it. But I'm guessing you don't want to see your wife in jail. He was right. Despite everything, I didn't want that. But I also wouldn't be played for a fool. Here's what I propose, Samuel continued, pulling out another document. A divorce settlement that's fair but firm. She returns 60% of the transferred funds. Waives any claim to the vacation home. You waive any claim to her new business venture. Clean break, no charges. I studied the draft agreement, weighing my options, and if she refuses, Samuel's expression was grim. Then we pursue all available legal remedies, including potential criminal charges for the fraudulent property sale. But let's try the civilized approach first. As I left Samuel's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Emily. My lawyer says you're bluffing. The house is joint property regardless of your trust trick. See you in court. I showed the message to Samuel, who shook his head. She's getting bad advice. The trust documentation is solid. Send the settlement offer, I decided. But prepare for court. I don't think she'll take the reasonable path. I spent the rest of Sunday in my hotel room reviewing financial records and property documents. With each page, each discovery of Emily's deception, my resolve strengthened. This wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about standing my ground against someone who thought they could simply take what I'd spent decades building. Monday morning I checked out of the hotel and drove to the county courthouse. Samuel had filed the divorce petition first thing, along with an emergency motion to prevent any property transfers pending resolution of our case. By 10 a.m., it was official. Emily couldn't legally sell the house even if it hadn't already been protected by the trust. Next, I visited First National Bank and spoke with the branch manager, Linda Rogers, an old client from my early days in real estate. Within an hour, I'd separated my accounts from Emily's and secured my remaining assets. "Anything else I can help with, Michael?" Linda asked as we finished the paperwork. "Just one thing," I replied. "Can you tell me when the next automatic payment to Elite Fitness is scheduled?" She checked the system. "There's a recurring payment of $355 set for tomorrow. It's been charging monthly for about a year and a half." I nodded. "Please cancel that. And any other automatic payments except utilities for the vacation home." By noon, I'd updated my credit cards, notified my company's HR department about changes to my benefits, and spoken with our insurance agent. Methodically, I was untangling 18 years of financial entanglement. My phone buzzed repeatedly throughout the morning. Emily, then her sister, then a number I didn't recognize that I assumed was her lawyer. I let them all go to voicemail. Around 2 p.m. I drove to the vacation home. Emily's car was gone, but the Mercedes still sat in the driveway. I used my key to enter, half expecting the locks to be changed, but they weren't. Alex was in the living room, hurriedly packing a duffel bag. He froze when he saw me. "I was just grabbing my things," he said quickly. I didn't respond, just stood in the doorway watching him. "Look, man," he continued, growing visibly uncomfortable. "This wasn't personal. Emily said the marriage was over long before I came along." "Where is she?" I asked. "At her sister's. She's pretty upset. Said you were trying to ruin her." I almost laughed at the irony. "Is that what she told you? That I'm the villain in this story?" He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "She said you were controlling, that you trapped her in this town while you traveled the world. And the business you two were planning to open with money from selling my house, was that my fault too?" His eyes widened slightly, a confirmation that Samuel's information was correct. "That's what I thought," I said. "You can tell Emily that her settlement offer is at Samuel Davis's office. She has 48 hours to accept before we proceed to a contested divorce and potential fraud charges." "Fraud?" The fear in his voice was unmistakable. "What are you talking about?" "Attempting to sell property she doesn't own. Opening businesses with misappropriated funds. Take your pick." Alex grabbed his bag and moved toward the door. I stepped aside to let him pass. "One more thing," I called after him. "The buyer, Robert Miller. Your cousin, right? Tell him if he wants to avoid being named as a co-conspirator in the fraud investigation, he should formally withdraw his offer on this property by close of business today." The look on Alex's face confirmed everything. Within an hour my phone rang. Samuel with news that Robert Miller had contacted the real estate agent to rescind his offer on the vacation home. By evening, I changed the locks, deactivated the old security system, and installed a new one with cameras. I ordered delivery from the seafood restaurant Emily and I had frequented in happier times and ate on the deck overlooking the ocean. The waves rolled in steadily, unchanging despite the chaos of human lives. Tomorrow would bring more legal maneuvers, more angry calls, more untangling of the life we'd built. But tonight, sitting in the house that remained mine, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Not joy, the end of a marriage could never bring that, but the solid certainty that comes from standing your ground when someone tries to take what's yours. 3 weeks later, I sat across from Emily in Samuel's conference room. Her attorney, a young woman with an expensive suit and nervous eyes, shuffled papers while attempting to project confidence. Emily hadn't spoken directly to me since that day in the kitchen. She'd communicated only through increasingly desperate legal threats that Samuel had systematically dismantled. Today was meant to be a pre-trial hearing, but we all knew it wouldn't get that far. The evidence was too overwhelming. "Before we begin," Samuel said calmly, "I'd like to submit these into evidence." He slid 3 documents across the table. The trust deed, bank records showing Emily's systematic withdrawal of funds, and a signed affidavit from Robert Miller, admitting to the fraudulent property purchase scheme. Emily's lawyer quickly scanned the affidavit, her expression falling. She leaned over to whisper something in Emily's ear. Her face remained rigid, but I could see the defeat in her eyes. "We're prepared to settle," her lawyer announced after their huddle, their hushed conversation. Samuel nodded. "Our terms are simple. Emily returns $120,000 of the misappropriated funds. She relinquishes all claims to the vacation home and other properties held in the trust. Michael waives any right to her new business venture and agrees not to pursue criminal charges." "And if I refuse?" Emily asked, the first words she'd spoken all morning. "Then we present this evidence to the district attorney." Samuel replied matter-of-factly. "Fraud over $100,000 carries serious penalties in Florida." Her lawyer placed a restraining hand on her arm. "We need to discuss this privately." They left the room for 20 minutes. When they returned, Emily wouldn't meet my eyes. "We accept the terms," her lawyer stated. I didn't speak, didn't gloat. Just signed where Samuel indicated and watched as Emily did the same. Her signature as familiar to me as my own after 18 years of shared tax contributions, Christmas cards and anniversary notes. It was over. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of the vacation home, coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the Atlantic. The property looked different now. I'd renovated the kitchen, replaced the weather-beaten siding with something more durable, and installed hurricane windows throughout. The changes weren't just practical, they were symbolic, wiping away the old to make room for something new. I'd heard through mutual friends that Emily and Alex had opened their fitness studio in Tampa, though on a smaller scale than originally planned. The business was struggling, apparently. I felt no satisfaction in that news, no joy in her difficulties, just a vague sadness for what might have been if different choices had been made. The divorce had finalized 3 months ago. Clean, final. The settlement terms executed. Without further drama, Emily had returned the agreed-upon funds, which I'd promptly invested in a commercial property in downtown Miami. A small office building with steady tenants and reliable income. My phone rang. Laura Martinez, my real estate attorney. "Just checking in," she said when I answered. "How's the vacation home?" "Getting better every day," I replied, watching a pair of pelicans glide over the waves. "Thanks again for your help with the trust setup." "That's what friends are for," she said. "Actually, I'm calling because I found another investment property that might interest you. Similar structure to what we did with the vacation home, but commercial, good protection, steady income." "Send me the details," I said. "I'm interested." After we hung up, I continued watching the ocean. The waves rolled in, steady and predictable in their rhythm. There was comfort in that consistency, that natural order that couldn't be manipulated or stolen away. I finished my coffee and headed inside to get ready for work. The house was just a house, wood and glass and concrete. But it was mine, and sometimes that's enough.